Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. So, of course, this story popped up, no pun intended, when I was preparing the live stream last night, and then this story appeared. So, we have to cover that, of course. I've been reading some of the comments before I came on the stream, so I have to touch on those as well. Let's see who we have on tonight. We have Enzo the God. Great to see you, Enzo. We have Gene T. Great to see you, Gene T. Piccadilly Pit, great to have you on. Colin, great to see you. Chatty Rat, great to see you too. Audrey, great to have you on. Hope you're well. CGM, great to see you. Thanks for moderating. We have Adrian, great to see you, Adrian. Night Raven, great to have you on moderating. Hope you're well tonight. We have Lulawat, great to see you. John O'Sullivan, great to have you on. We have, let me see. We have a super chat from Valerio. Thanks so much, Valerio. Hi, Max. Will you ever have a stream with Byline? That's a very interesting question, because some months ago I was contacted by someone from Byline on Twitter asking if I could drop by the studio. I was like, not really, because I'm living quite far away. But I said that if I'm in London sometime, I definitely will drop in. So they actually asked me to pop in sometime to. They have a live stream and an after show stream, I think it is, and they had asked if I'd like to join that. So I just need to contact them again, and it would be probably a Friday. They always do it on a Friday, so I could do a live stream with them. I really like the idea of doing it in person, so it could be something really nice. So I need to hop on a plane and get to London. And if I do, definitely, if there's some people on the stream tonight from London, I know there are a few, so maybe we could meet up for a chat or something. That'd be great. But I'll keep you guys posted. I haven't looked into it recently, but I will check on it. That was at the beginning of the year, so I must do something about that. Be really nice. Thanks so much, Valerio. We have also Jacob. Great to see you, Jacob. Killer, thanks for moderating. We have you, Young Ralph, Christy as well. Duke, great to see you. Mega Hairy Bum, so many. Great to have you on too. Conservator, great to see you. Roisin, great to have you on. Mark R. The Ministerian, great to see you, and so many more. So, we're up to 200, so I'll have to jump down to the bottom. So I hope everyone's very well tonight. I hope you had a good week. Just to let you know, there won't be a Sunday brunch this Sunday, but we'll have one the following Sunday, on the 8th, I think it is, the 8th of May. So I'll keep you posted on that, but this Sunday there's no Sunday brunch. Let's start off with this story, of course. I was reading some of your comments about who you thought it could have been before it turned out to be Neil Parish. I had thought maybe Jacob Rees-Mogg. And some of the content that he would have been looking at, Nanny's ankles and other such things as that. Pints in Rathone, Max, definitely. If I'm in Rathone, I definitely meet up with you, Cahill, for a pint. London has a nasty smell around it. So it says here, Neil Parish, Tory MP at centre of Commons pornography scandal. And it seems he has lost the whip. No pun intended there either. At the end of a live GB News interview just 3 days ago about a report on rural poverty, Neil Parish was asked in passing, and I'll show you the clip in a moment, in passing for his views on claims that a Tory MP had been caught watching pornography. If you have got 650 members of Parliament in what is a very intense area, you're going to get people to that step over the line, the Conservative MP told GB News, poker-faced. I don't think this is necessarily a huge culture of that behaviour here, but it does have to be dealt with, and dealt with seriously, and I think this is what the whip's do in their whip's office. After a 12-year parliamentary career in which the MP for Tiverton and Honiton had rarely, if ever, been elevated to national importance, he now finds himself at the centre of a political storm that has emerged on Friday that the Tory whip had been removed from him over the allegations. The former member of the European Parliament for South West England and a councillor before that parish was part of the 2010 parliamentary intake when he won what was increasingly becoming a safe Tory seat. Since then, he has avoided controversy and tended to measure his words relatively carefully in media appearances, and has served since 2015 as chair of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee. And I've covered him before. I probably know him a bit better than maybe most people. Until recently, I thought he was a pretty decent enough Tory. You know, there are a few of them about, and he's somebody who came across, who appeared as someone quite reasonable, but he has a dark side, it seems. Only a few areas where he had gone against the grain of his own party has been his opposition to rewilding, which he opposed despite being a position endorsed by Boris Johnson himself and most of the party. One Tory source with a previous working experience with him on the EFRA committee, to which Parish was returned chair in successful terms, described him as quiet and hardworking. He would not have been on the top of my list of suspects, they adding that Parish 65 is rather boring, actually. So we don't know what sort of material he was looking at. Well, here was the interview he had with GB News, and just look at his demeanour here.
And just very finally, Neil, while we've got you on these reports, and we know your chief whip is looking into them from a female minister about another Conservative frontbencher watching pornography on his phone. What's your reaction to that? I mean, it's pretty jaw-dropping, the suggestion that it's happened. I mean, frankly, whoever it is, I mean, surely they would have to have the whip removed, wouldn't they?
I mean, I think the whip's office will do a thorough investigation, and we will wait and see that result. And I think, from that, then the decision will have to be made what action to be taken.
Is there
So at this stage, did he know? Lola once says, no wonder he he went blind. It was probably something with pegging. Needs to watch the reflection on his screen. Yeah, there's some blue thing on the screen. I hope it's not what we think it is. Oh my god. But his expression doesn't change. Now, I don't know whether he knew he was being investigated at this stage. He knew it was him. Maybe he thought it was, well, I probably got away with it. It's probably somebody else.
a problem with the culture in Parliament, do you reckon? I mean, it's not just Conservative MPs, we should say, this is a cross-party issue, but there is a sense, I think, for people outside looking in, that there are just a whole range of stories, even this year.
Thomas asks, how was he found out? What happened was a female member of Parliament raised a complaint about it. Now, I think she went to the Tory whips to complain about it, and then the Tory whips, someone in the whip, one of the, maybe in the office there or whatever, leaked the information to the media, and then the Tory whip were deciding to punish this person. He was a farmer, so at least the sheep were given a break. Oh my goodness. So he was found out because somebody saw him doing it. And it hasn't been the first time, it seems. He did it in the House of Commons recently, and then he's also been doing it in select committees, which is concerning because I don't know what other select committees he attends, but if he's the chair, it's like, it's not somebody who's just sitting in, or somebody who's giving evidence and then waiting their turn. This is the chair of the select committee, I imagine, but allegedly he was doing it also during select committees. Maybe some of the select committees that I've covered with Neil Parish in them, we switch back to Neil and he's smiling and we think he's laughing at something, and it's not the case. Big Maj is on, Max. Great to have you on, Big Maj. Hope you're well. What was she complaining about? The quality of the video wasn't good enough. Oh no, I don't. He's a banker. No, not a banker. What kind of committees is he in? Yes. Allegedly, well, he should. As far as I know, he's only in the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee. Let's wait for the Sue Gray report before jumping to conclusions. The Tory MP watches porn during a mass debate. Is select committee a euphemism? Private blue committees. I know that there were wankers in Parliament, but this is a bit too much. Oh my god. Time to send in Sue Gray. Yeah, 50 Shades of Sue Gray.
Yeah, involving different MPs that gives a sense that there's a cultural problem inside Parliament.
I think if you've got sort of 650 members of Parliament in what is, a very sort of very intense area, I mean, you are going to get people that step over the line. I mean, is it, I don't think there's necessarily a huge culture here, but I think it does have to be dealt with seriously. And I think, that's what the whips will do in our whips office.
If you knew it was you, how do you say that you should be punished, but not say that you're, obviously he knows it's him, and he's able to say, yeah, well, I should get punished. Not me, sorry. The whoever is responsible for this egregious act should be punished. But don't worry, the whips will look into that. Well, I suppose the Tories aren't really so stingy when the gift is that's giving disaster after disaster. 50 Shades soon to be outnumbered by Pocho lies. Watching porn won't make them less tense, will it? It doesn't seem to be working so far.
Neil, really appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Neil Parish there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Consider MP.
Okay. I'm going to read some more of your comments before we go on. Down with this sort of thing. He might like a bit of punishment. I bet his favourite ice cream is Mr. Whippy. He's probably more familiar with Whip's dungeons than offices. I actually thought it was going to be... I for a moment I thought it could have been Boris Johnson. But then that would have gone too far. Maybe... I was racking my brain, at the beginning of this. Who could it have been? Could it have been Rishi Sunak? Could it have been... Matt Hancock, no. Dominic Raab. A large group of people is very tense. It's okay to enjoy adult activities publicly. Maybe every streaker at a football match finds refunded because it was down to pressure. Yes. All getting frothy on the front bench. That's terrible. You people, get your minds out of the gutter. Okay, let's move on to something a bit more serious. The Electoral Commission concerned after Tories vote to place it under government control. And this is very concerning. The Electoral Commission, so I'm going from comedy to tragedy in 0 to 100. In 0.6 seconds. The Electoral Commission has said it's concerned about its future independence after the government passed a new law to put it under ministerial control. The Electoral Commission is supposed to be independent. If the ministers decide how it operates, then it's no longer independent. And you would have ministers ruling over whether certain votes can take place. They will be ruling over the validity of certain votes taking. For example, you can imagine a situation where there is a recount requested by a member of the opposition. There's a seat that is potentially being lost. The Tories are potentially losing a seat to the Labour Party or Lib Dems or whoever, and the Electoral Commission, maybe, I don't know if they have this responsibility, but maybe they could, the politicians, the minister would put pressure on them to say, no, we're not going to allow a recount, or maybe no, there will be no counting. It will be the government that will do the counting. Opponents say that the changes endanger the principle of free and fair elections, amount to an authoritarian power grab that will let ministers shape how electoral law applies to their own party and to political opponents. Under the law, which it was passed by peers by 202 votes to 181, a Secretary of State will be able to issue unilaterally a statement of purpose that directs the Commission's priorities. Now, it seems that 100 Labour peers did not vote this down. Why did that not happen? Why did that happen? Why did they not vote? Here we are in North Korea, yes. The bill will also automatically add a government minister to the committee that oversees and scrutinises the work of the Commission, entrenching a Tory majority. The law had been defeated by peers on Monday, but sent back to the upper house again 2 days later in a move that sources in the House of Lords say caught opposition parties off guard. Just 67 Labour peers turned out to vote against the measure, 70 Liberal Democrats, 33 crossbenchers and 3 rebel Conservatives. The House of Lords has 667 members and an inbuilt opposition majority, but many peers did not turn up to vote on all occasions. Why the hell not? That is your frigging job. You're paid £300 a day, or you can claim £300 a day as an expense, and you didn't turn up and vote. What else do these people have to do? This is your unique job. If you don't want to do the job, don't do it. Stay at home. Give up the job. Give up the role as a peer to someone else. You have one job to do: to sit in the House of Lords and vote on amendments or on bills. And this is important. Opposition parties were surprised by how many Tories turned up on Wednesday and were unable to stop the bill despite having done so 2 days earlier. So the Tories threw this back in, knowing that the Labour or opposition peers would not turn up, and pushed it through. Responding to the vote, a spokesperson for the Electoral Commission said, "As the political finance regulator and the body that oversees free and fair elections, that we work and the way we work and our decision must remain independent. This underpins fairness and trust in the electoral system, as well as public and cross-party confidence in the Commission. We remain concerned about the potential impact of this measure and look to the formal consultation on the government's proposed statement once that is available. All parties have stated during the parliamentary consideration of the elections bill that the independence of the Electoral Commission is vital to the functioning of a healthy democracy. Well, the Tories are not interested in that. The Commission will continue to act in an independent and impartial way in order to help maintain public confidence in elections across the UK. The bill also introduced a requirement for voter ID at elections, which critics say will make it disproportionately harder for Democrats that favor opposition parties to vote, therefore suppressing turnout. This is taken right out of the Republican Party in the USA's playbook. Make it more difficult, disenfranchise people who normally vote against you, and then you can help yourself win. It doesn't guarantee victory, but if you throw as many obstacles as you can, and this is exactly what is happening in the US with the Republicans. They are getting less and less popular. So instead of actually providing policies to convince people to vote for them, instead what they do is they create obstacles. So for example, an example I remember reading about some years ago was in Texas. So in Texas, you need to vote, you need certain types of ID. For example, a valid type of ID is a gun license. Now, people who generally have guns or love guns generally vote, not always, but generally vote for the Republican Party. You know what type of ID is not considered acceptable in the state of Texas? Student ID. So a gun license, yes. Student ID, no. Who do you think students would normally vote for? Republicans or Democrats? There you have it. So bringing in voter ID when I think there were something like 2 or 3 cases, not 2 or 3%, 2 or 3 cases of fraud at the elections in the UK the last time, or in the last 5 years. I don't remember, the last 10 years. Very small, insignificant amount. And if you bring in ID, then of course you can decide which type of ID, you can change it whenever you want, and you can disenfranchise people. Kyle Taylor, director of the campaign group Fair Vote UK, said that the government had essentially voted to officially end the independence of the Electoral Commission, and that new powers mean ministers can effectively rig elections rules in their favour. This is how countries slide into authoritarianism, he said. He added, first you take control of the institutions, then you rig them in your favour and ban noisy protest so people can't fight back. It's a dark day for democracy. Naomi Smith, chief executive of the campaign group Best for Britain, said last night was the last chance to protect the independence of the electoral elections watchdog, and with it free and fair elections in the UK. Despite the enormous efforts of a cross-party, cross-organisational resistance to the government's authoritarian power grab, tonight Johnson's regime succeeded in its latest pursuit to dodge accountability. There is now an urgent need to remove this government and undo the damage they have wrought on our institutions and public trust in politics. Opposition parties must work together to make this a reality. We've seen it before, and we're going to see worse coming down the road. I'm really concerned about this, because what you do is you influence entities like a commission, like the Electoral Commission. You take control of them, then you're able to control the vote. It's not about who can turn out to vote, it's about who cannot turn out to vote. You need to limit, if you want to take control, and we're seeing it with the Republicans in the US. They're becoming less and less popular, so what they do is they throw obstacles in the way of people's ability to vote, and the Tories are doing the same thing. They're afraid that they're going to lose power next time, so create obstacles. And this is long-term thinking as well. So, it may not work this time, but it may work in the future. So you're future-proofing these. And these need to be taken away as soon as the Tories are out. Complete and utter reform. These things need to be taken away. The Electoral Commission should be reinstated as an independent commission. Now, of course, it's very tempting for whoever is in power at that time to say, well, we could take advantage of this as well. I hope the Labour Party are not going to do that if Keir Starmer wins at the next election. But they need to roll back a lot of these measures that the Tories have put in. A little bit more on this. Dark day Electoral Commission concerned as Tories pass controversial bill. And what really annoys me about this is, where were all these peers? Where were these opposition peers? Why didn't they turn up? Surely they get notifications. They get communications, emails, messages, or whatever, that yes, there's a vote taking place today. Normally these things are on a calendar. There's a calendar. And once again, these people are being paid or can claim £300 a day. £300 a day, okay? So they have to come in and vote for or vote against something. That's their bloody job. I really like to know why these people did not turn up. I don't see any reports saying why they didn't. They didn't know. I don't accept that as an excuse. These things are These are things that are put in a calendar, okay, or they would receive some sort of email or notification about it. Oh my goodness. Let me read some of your comments. People in the UK are disenfranchised all the time. If you have to pay council tax when you are disabled, living on £100 a week, you can't even watch television, never mind heating, lighting and eating. And I think you've raised a very valid point here. If people, who can come out and protest? Generally it's people who are able to protest. If you're disabled, you're not going to be able to come out and protest in the same way as somebody who's able to. If you are struggling to pay bills, you don't have the money to go to a protest. And unfortunately, and I've said this before, and I hate saying it, but protest is maybe not the way to go. Letters to your MP, especially if they're a Conservative MP. 100 letters to an MP is better than 100,000 people protesting. Unfortunately, that's the reality. Was it in a calendar? Is it possible the government didn't give enough notice? I think all of these things are in a calendar. They sit on certain days. The business has to be already approved by the Speaker of the House of Lords or the Speaker of the House of Commons. So these things are normally done in advance, unless there's some emergency debate. But I don't think this was the case. I'll be a lord. I could do with £300 a day in expenses. Yes. I'd come on my scooter, Max. It's not saltire in hand. Yay. UK MPs represent about 90,000 people. US Congress represents about 750,000 people. Chairs thrown under you. Okay. S-Mac, thanks so much for that super chat. Thanks, Max, for telling the truth about the lies of Brexit. As you say that, thanks so much for that super chat. Let's get to the lies of Brexit. So I want to move on from the Electoral Commission to Brexit. It says here, Jacob Rees-Mogg set to delay post-Brexit fresh food checks for fourth time. Minister expected to frame move as a use of UK's independent powers despite industry reports of unreadiness. So you've probably heard the clip today. I think it was made yesterday, where Jacob Rees-Mogg was interviewed by ITV, where he said, "Yeah, we're not going to put these checks in place that would cost £1 billion. So we've saved £1 billion. You'll have to put in these checks at some stage, but The fact that you're not imposing something that costs money is not a Brexit benefit. But this is Max's channel is the only Brexit benefit I have seen. Oh, thank you very much, Colin. Very kind of you. The big Marvininsky, thanks so much for that super chat. Thanks for doing a service the media should be doing. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. Thanks so much for your support. I just think it needs to be called out. These things have to be called out. And it's really annoying that you see, for example, the Brexit issue is hardly ever touched by the BBC in particular. Okay, the UK government is set to announce a fourth delay to physical checks on fresh food imported from the UK from the EU amid industry concerns that neither technology nor infrastructure resources will be ready for the July start of the next phase of Brexit. You know, I said this in the video. What happened after 2016 was the European Union instructed member states that dealt directly with Britain, prepare for Brexit, prepare for the UK becoming a third country. Now, nobody knew at the time whether the UK would leave or remain in the single market and the customs union. But the EU said, look, we need to be prepared either way. And on the UK side, you had Nigel Farage, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Boris Johnson and others saying, no, everything will be fine. We don't need to put in infrastructure because they need us more than we need them. And they're not going to put checks on goods going in to the EU. And we're not going to put checks in place on goods moving from the EU into us. Because exceptionalism or something like that. Like the experts were saying, yes, checks will need to be put in place. The politicians were saying, no, they won't. And there was no real preparation made until 2019 and 2020. But at that stage, it was a bit too late. The Brexit Opportunities Minister, once again, we're living in some sort of weird Twilight Zone or weird... maybe it's we're all in a matrix here because this makes absolutely no... This is satirical. The Brexit Opportunities Minister, Jacob Rees-Mogg, is expected to frame the move as use of the UK's newfound independence powers to control the trade border since the departure from the EU and the single market. So we now have the freedom to control the border and allow smuggling to take place, because this is the benefit that comes from this for smugglers. Oh, okay, the UK is no longer carrying out checks, great. But checks are taking place on the other side, which means that if you're a farmer, for example, exporting your goods into the EU, you have to complete all the paperwork. But if the UK is not carrying out checks the other way, well, if paperwork is not completed correctly, it's going to go through anyway. And this is the problem, because it means that certain things could be imported without any sort of checks. And this could be potentially deadly, because certain pathogens maybe in meat or other produce could be coming in without these checks in place. I'm not saying that it's likely, but it's possible. That's why the checks are necessary. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Breaking news: Westminster sources claim that Sir Ranvinti is the X-rated MP. Max, are you available for comment on this? Crossed legs. I knew there's always two, isn't there? So there's Neil Parish and there's Sir Ranvinti. I knew he was up to no good. You can't trust this guy, okay? You know, he's my twin, but he's the evil one. I hope. He thinks he's the good one and I'm the evil one, but he's the evil one and he can't be trusted. I once opened the browser on my computer and I had to, I have a strong stomach, okay, but I had to cover my eyes. It was shocking what I had seen on the computer history. Not going there again. shocking stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised. He was probably boasting about it while he was in the House of Commons as well. That's Iran for you. Margaret Thatcher type stuff, and and Anne Whitcomb type stuff. Really, really shocking. Okay, I'd be traumatized for life over it. Thanks for that super chat. Where am I? He's also expected to say that this is in response to supply chain fears in the trading environment already hit by the Ukraine war and the cost of living crisis. The delays could push back the full implementation of Brexit controls until 2023, sources said, with physical checks removed and a potential relaxation of the requirement for import of animals, food and feed systems paperwork. So, as I said, a lot of these things will come in, but they will not be checked. Early this month, the outage of the key post-Brexit IT system Goods Vehicle Movement Service, GVMS, combined with the halting of P&O Ferries routes, led to long delays for freight traffic trying to cross the channel. And, the government were blaming the holidays, they were blaming the weather, they were blaming P&O, but they wouldn't mention the IT system. The IT system was down for a number of days, and that created some problems. This IT system would not be required if Brexit had not happened, of course. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. I think he was doing more than boasting, Max. I don't want to think about it. I'm still only recovering. Okay, it was quite harrowing. Thanks much for that, Gareth. The delays could push back to earlier this month. That industry sources said small suppliers in the EU were not prepared for physical border checks or capable of getting the veterinary certificates that would be required on fresh food ranging from artisan cheese to olive oil and the dried meats from countries such as Spain and Italy. EU suppliers are going to be hit in exactly the same way as British fish and food suppliers were last year. The difference here is that the UK has no way of helping EU suppliers, said one industry representative. At least, see, a big problem also is that if EU suppliers can't send stuff to Britain, then they just stop sending stuff to Britain. While the other way around, Britain didn't really have anywhere else to send stuff because a lot of it was fresh. So at the beginning of last year, okay, we want to sell stuff into the EU, but we need all these health certificates and all this paperwork. But if you don't have anywhere else to send it, then you're up what creek without a paddle. Another said, "This is good news as far as this is good news as far as we're concerned. We have obviously had problems with GVMS in general, and we don't want egg on their faces." The sanitary and phytosanitary checks have been operational in all EU countries with which the UK shares a border, including France, Belgium and Ireland, since the Brexit withdrawal agreement was implemented on the 1st of January. The cliff edge approach left exporters of fish and other fresh food in chaos, with the lack of customs agents and veterinary staff to certify whether the produce complied with EU standards. But in the UK, post-Brexit checks on fresh food were not implemented for imports, being pushed back in 2020 and on 2 occasions in 2021. Under the new border plan, physical checks on meat were due to start on the 1st of July and on dairy on the 1st of September, with all remaining foods, including fish and composite foods, to be subject to checks from the 1st of November. So all of this seems to have been postponed until next year. And then next year, what are they going to do? Postpone again? See, the problem with this is that you can't just keep postponing it, because it's harming British business who are trying to export, because they're facing an unlevel playing field. And then you have all this infrastructure that has been paid for, but it's not being used. So that's a cost. And then, the ports are saying, okay, do we need to hire people or not? Because that's a cost as well. Staying with Brexit, let me read some more of your comments before we continue. Good night, Max. I'm off to the EU to see what a Brexit benefit looks like. Packet in Killer, I can't see my keys. What has Killer been up to on the stream? Naughty Killer. Mogg should be renamed Minister for Brexit Opportunities for EU member states. He should probably even claim an EU salary and pension, like Farage. In Portugal, the USA has already replaced the UK as one of the destinations for Portuguese exportations by a long shot. I wasn't expecting the USA, but not the keys. Not sure what's going on there. But yeah, it's not just I wouldn't expect the USA. I would imagine EU member states. But if it's easier to sell stuff to the USA than to Britain, that's extremely serious because Britain is so much closer. You would imagine it would be easier. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat once again. What an EU state can't import from the UK due to Brexit? They can easily import from another EU state. The UK doesn't have the ability now, do they? Where do we go for a proper import of goods? It's a very good question. If the UK can't import from the EU or is having problems importing from the EU, I asked Sir Ron, has a tennis elbow. That's all, Max. Okay, I'm not sure what that's about. But if you can't import, then you have to try and import them from other third countries. But what other third countries? Tomatoes, oranges. Some of these things can be imported maybe from North Africa. But the problem is that importing stuff from North Africa takes a long time. And you're going to get certain produce, but it's not going to last. It's going to go bad in a few days' time and go bad in a shorter period of time. So it becomes more expensive. Because if you have to throw away half the produce, then you're going to pay more for it. And then the shipping, I don't know how, it's more expensive maybe shipping stuff by sea than at the moment. Containers are much more expensive. Over 30% of Ireland's exports go to the USA. Only 9% go to Great Britain. Because of EU trade deals. Or trade agreements, I should say. It says here, Ireland says Britain causing renewed tension over Northern Ireland Protocol. Irish Foreign Minister Simon Coveney, who's not very popular with unionists, said on Friday the prospect of Britain introducing laws to unilaterally overrule parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol governing post-Brexit trade is causing friction in talks with the EU. Britain and the EU have spent months trying to agree on how to remove many of the checks on goods entering Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK agreed under the protocol. A British minister said on Thursday that sides were at an impasse. Local media has reported Britain is preparing laws that could be introduced as soon as next month to do away with parts of the protocol. Ministers have said they're looking at a range of options. I don't think this is going to happen. We're right up to an election, unless it comes after the election. But I think you're going to see a very different makeup in Northern Ireland. I think you're going to see Sinn Féin as the biggest party, a Sinn Féin First Minister, and I think a lot of this rhetoric around the protocol will sort of die down, because I think a lot of it is building up to the election on the 5th of May, and where unionist parties are trying to jockey for position, and the protocol seems to be one of the options, one of the tools that the DUP and the TUV are using at the moment. I don't think it's going to work for them, because people are more concerned about bread and butter issues such as the cost of living crisis. And if Sinn Féin become the biggest party and have the position of First Minister, I don't think the UK government are going to be banging on about the protocol. Maybe they will, but I don't think so. I think this is the last throw of the die for them. We're hearing some voices in the UK, in London at the moment, that the British government is going to effectively pass legislation to override elements of international law in order to do away with elements of the protocol, Coveney told an event in the United States. This is causing tension between the British government and the EU, he added. Perceptions that the protocol erodes Northern Ireland's place in the UK have sparked anger in pro-British communities. The largest unionist party, the Democratic Unionist Party, has said it will not enter a new power-sharing government after elections next week in the British-run province unless the protocol is completely overhauled. I don't think, I could be wrong here, but I think the DUP will go into power-sharing with Sinn Féin, because the DUP like power. And if they refuse and the assembly does not meet, I think this would be very, very damaging for unionism. And you could potentially see the UUP say, okay, well, if you're not going to do it, then we will. And then the DUP would be marginalised. I don't know if that's possible, but you could have fresh elections where Sinn Féin would become the biggest party again, and maybe the UUP would become the second biggest party, and the DUP and the TUV would be sidelined. But I don't know if that's possible at the moment. Convey said the DUP stance, along with anxieties in parts of the unionist community over polls showing Irish nationalists Sinn Féin set to become the biggest party for the first time, will make forming a new administration very, very difficult. He said the institutions established under the 1998 Good Friday Agreement were perhaps under more threat now than they have been at any point. Since then, adding, he remained hopeful that Northern Ireland would find a way out of the impasse. We'll have to wait and see. Guys, so we're halfway through the stream, so I want to take a short comedy moment, as always. I hope you enjoyed this funny clip, and then I'll see you back in a moment.
Oh, embarrassed apology. Emotionless greeting. Strongly denying that any of my colleagues have knowingly been watching pornography in the House of Commons. They were, in fact, ambushed by Cog. Aware that local elections are next week, consequently stepping up rhetoric and offering shitloads of public handouts, knowing none of them will actually be delivered. Also announcing an air quote innovative policy, which nobody asked for, promising to cut how often your car needs an MOT, with flagrant disregard for public safety, proving the Conservative Party continues to be the party of unnecessary deaths. Taking question from leader of the SNP.
Asking the Minister about devolution, saying we need some more money. Wondering if you're looking at my legs right now, you dirty old pamphlet. You.
Cutting you off. Taking question from a member of the opposition. Oh, God. Taking question from another member of the opposition. Relieved sigh.
Wondering if the Minister would like to comment on the cost of living crisis.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Post-coital shudder. Addressing latest Partygate accusations, asking you to please move on from the events of 2020 which are in the past. However, constantly blaming the previous Labour government for things as if they weren't last in power 12 sodding years ago. Cognitively dissonant slow blink. Finally, acknowledging that we have been found guilty of breaking the law over care homes during the pandemic, but still somehow believing it was a perfectly reasonable policy to force vulnerable elderly people infected with a deadly pathogen into enclosed spaces with other elderly people so that thousands died, and the official line from Tory Party HQ appears to be that we're not even sorry, apparently. Remember, the big calls we got right. Ghostly nod.
Shrinking, thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, let's move on. This is quite serious for the Tories. Blow for Rishi Sunak as Tories lose poll lead on taxation. So for some strange reason, people used to trust the Tories for, on the economy. And Rishi Sunak has sort of blown that, it seems. Lightbulb moment max, import everything we need from Rwanda. Rwanda is a beautiful country. It's great. It's wonderful. Many medical doctors so say. Thanks so much, Gareth. Yes, it's not a deterrent. It's a wonderful place. So maybe, import everything from there. It's the perfect solution to the problem of Brexit. Not sure exactly what they produce, but try and work the economy around that. Thanks for that. Labour have jumped ahead of the Tories as the best party on tax as Rishi Sunak comes under growing pressure to do more to help families struggling with the cost of living crisis, a poll has revealed. The Ipsos survey for the Standard showed Sir Keir Starmer's party has reversed the lead that Boris Johnson's Conservatives had on taxation before the 2019 general election. Now Labour is seen as the best party on tax by 32% of adults in Britain, with the Tories trailing on 25%. Fearless Wolf, thanks so much for that super chat. Darth Vader was a twin brother who's a Tory. He's called Tax Evader. I was expecting something different, but Tax Evader, that's cool. Everyone has a Tory brother, it seems. This is a turnaround for the Conservatives being on 38% and Labour on 26% in December 2019, and is the latter's best results since September 2012. The findings came just weeks after the Chancellor increased national insurance contributions by 1.25 percentage points and just days before town hall elections. Many households are now also seeing their weekly budget hit by soaring energy bills, rising food prices, other inflation, and the high cost of petrol. Significantly, the poll found the cost of living was the standout issue, which people would see as very important if they voted in the May 5th local elections. This was cited by 67% of adults, far higher than climate change, the asylum policies, both on 47%, followed by the pandemic, 43%, levelling up 42%, Ukraine 38%, and Downing Street parties 37%. Now, I'm laughing about this because, look, it's funny how people will vote in a local election, because most of these are not actually dealt with by local government. So, for example, climate change, the local government can do a little bit, but it's very limited. Asylum policies, the council has no control over asylum policies. The pandemic, levelling up, very little control over that. Ukraine, no. And Downing Street parties, once again, these are not things. Yes, people will say, I'm going to vote against the Tories because I'm upset about Boris Johnson and Partygate. But it's not really, you're not really voting against Boris Johnson. But look, if people vote against the Tories, that's good enough. It's just weird how people will vote on national issues in a local election. On the latter, but I think the Labour Party need to be focusing on the cost of living crisis. Cost of living crisis, cost of living. Repeat it. We're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. We're going to come up with some ideas. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But I'm not a big fan of the. I I'm a fan of the windfall tax, but I think it should be something that a windfall tax is a bit distant for people. You need to provide something. We would give you a check, a grant to deal with your energy costs. We're going to put a cap on the energy prices. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. That's when and it needs to be direct intervention, providing people with cash. That would convince people to come out and vote for you. So you say, look, an election could be around the corner. Vote for us if you agree to deal with the cost of living crisis. As the cost of living crisis grows, Mr. Sunak has opened the door to a windfall tax on energy giants if they fail to invest significantly to boost supplies. This would be a major change in policy. This is something that the Labour Party had presented, and the response from the Tories was, no, we're not going to put a windfall tax on these companies. It'll mean that they won't invest. Okay, we're considering a windfall tax on energy companies. They're pathetic. Other key findings are Labour is on 40%, up 1 point, with the Tories on 35%, Liberal Democrats 10%, both unchanged on last month. Record low findings for Boris Johnson's Prime Minister earlier this year have improved slightly, while Keir Starmer's score are marginally down. 55% think the Conservatives should change their leader, compared with 61% in January. That's interesting. But still worse than Mr. Johnson's scores in 2019-2021, and worse than Theresa May's and David Cameron's. So when Theresa May was removed, she had higher approval ratings. 31% believe Mr. Johnson has what it takes to be a good premier, but 56% disagree. 31% think Boris Johnson is still a good prime minister, better than in January when Partygate re-erupted, but only back to his scores in November. And this is what I've been saying before, is how Boris Johnson's support goes up and down. There'll be a scandal, it will go down. It will be forgotten about, it'll go back up again. 34% say Keir Starmer is ready to be Prime Minister, with 44% disagreeing, slightly worse than in January when the scores were 38 to 40. And a third say Labour is ready to form a government, 46% disagreeing. Similar to 32% who believe the Conservatives deserve to be re-elected, and 51% having the opposite view. Interesting stuff. Want to move on to this topic here about PPE. So it says here, Michelle Mone's home raided as PPE firm linked to Tory peer investigated. So she is a member of the House of Lords. Don't know why she's there. Don't know what she did, but she's in the House of Lords. And it seems she set up a company, or she had a company that won a contract for PPE. But there's something a bit fishy about it. The National Crimes Agency has launched a potential fraud investigation into a PPE company linked to Michelle Mone and search the Tory peer's shared home. The NCA investigated into PPE MedPro, a company that secured more than £200 million in government contracts near the start of the pandemic without public tender. Do you remember that period where Matt Hancock was health secretary, was giving out PPE contracts like they were going out of fashion? On Wednesday, and of course he said, well, we had to give them out without tender because, there was an emergency. It's just strange how people connected to the party managed to win the most lucrative ones. On Wednesday, the agency searched several properties associated with the company in the Isle of Man. Isle of Man, of course. If you for those who don't know, the Isle of Man is a place where you set up business if you want to keep things hidden. And London. They include the Isle of Man office building where PPE MedPro is registered, and the mansion where Lady Mone lives with her husband, the business magnate Douglas Barrowman. The Isle of Man Constabulary confirmed that search warrants were executed at four addresses on the island on Wednesday in support with the ongoing NCA investigation. There were no arrests. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat once again. On Northern Ireland for a moment, people are starving, can't heat their homes, can't support their kids, can barely survive, let alone live. Unionist response: trash the executive along with any hopes of tangible resolutions is criminal. I agree. This whole thing of we're not going to go into power with Sinn Féin because we want the protocol overhauled. Or, well, imagine if Sinn Féin had done this. Imagine if Sinn Féin wanted something like some sort of constitutional change. They campaigned for it. It turned out to be a mess, even though people said it was a bad idea. And then they campaigned to get rid of it, even though they had voted for it. And they said, well, we're not going to go into government, even if we become the second biggest party. We're not going to go into government with the DUP because we want this thing that we voted for and campaigned for removed. People would say, get the hell out of here. And you're right. It's the unionists, and I think there are parties, maybe the UUP are focusing more on real issues than the likes of the DUP and the TUV. Because the real issues are paying bills, feeding family. Those are the things that people care about. People don't care about the Northern Ireland Protocol. Business people, maybe some of them do. And you have the lunatic fringe that care about it. But most people are more concerned about having a job, paying their bills, paying their rent, paying their mortgage, making sure they have food on the table, making sure that they're able to absorb these new rising costs, for example, heating homes and stuff that are around the corner. It seems that in November things are going to the cap. I don't remember what the situation is in Northern Ireland, but in Britain the cap is going to go up again. Martin, thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind. No comment, but thank you so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. The Good Law Project exposed MedPro. I remember that. And this is something about the Good Law Project is they win a number of cases. And you imagine, well, look, there's nothing going to come from this, but this seems to be the result. Hopefully, this is the result of that. Thanks so much, Martin and Gareth. Just to go back to this, more than a dozen law enforcement officers were understood to have turned up unexpectedly at Knox House building in the island's capital, Douglas, where the Isle of Man PPE MedPro company is registered. One witness described the building being guarded by officers both at the front and rear. The officers are understood to have seized documents, computers, phones, and other electronic devices from the building. Also searched was a Windward Street address in central London, the office of UK-registered PPE MedPro company that was awarded 2 government contracts worth £203 million. A member of staff at the building told The Guardian, "It's a no comment all around. Lawyers for PPE MedPro declined to comment." There is no evidence that the NCA investigation is connected to matters that had previously been the subject of public controversy. However, the investigation is likely to resurface questions about the wider £12 billion in PPE contracts the government awarded during the pandemic under emergency rules that bypass normal competitive tender processes. It will also put under renewed focus on both PPE MedPro and the process through which the company secured its government contracts. It has been the focus of multiple controversies in recent months that have embroiled Mon and other senior Tories, including Michael Gove, Theodore Agnew, and James Bethell. The company was one of 51 businesses that were processed through a VIP lane operating by the government to fast-track companies that had been recommended by politically connected individuals. And we've seen this before, and this is a picture of the wonderful couple. Mon appears to have been instrumental in PP MedPro being entered into the high priority VIP lane by Agnew. This is how these things work. This is probably what happened. Somebody who's well connected to the Conservative Party, either a donor or somebody who's well connected generally, says, look, is there a contract coming up for PPE? And Matt Hancock or whoever was responsible at the time would say, yeah, there's a contract coming up. Okay, give it to me and maybe I'll give you a share of the winnings, or give it to me and I'll make sure more donations come into the party, or I'll give donations directly to you. And what these people do is they generally either they're not in the business of PPE, or they have something similar, and they set up a company immediately, and they start purchasing PPE, for example, from China at a very low cost, and then fleecing the NHS, selling it to the NHS at a very big profit. In some cases, we're talking about 1,000% profit, 1,000% margin, sorry. The House of Lords Standard Commissioner Martin Jelly then launched an investigation. In January, the Guardian reported that leaked files appeared to suggest Mon and Barrowman were secretly involved in the PP Medbro business. At the time, Mon's lawyers said in response to the Guardian's findings were grounded entirely on supposition and speculation, and not based on accuracy. I remember that. The House of Lords Standards Commission, Martin Jelly, then launched an investigation, which is still ongoing, into whether Mon's links to the company breached rules related to members. She has denied any wrongdoing. Responding to previous stories, Mon's lawyers have said any suggestions of an association or collusion between the Tory peer and the PP Medbro would be inaccurate, and that she was not involved in the business. Baroness Mon is neither an investor, director, or shareholder in any way associated with PP Medpro. She has never had any role or function in PP Medpro, nor in the process in which the contracts were awarded to PP Medpro. Mon's lawyers have said that she has undergone the simple, solitary, and brief step of referring PP Medpro to the government. She had nothing further to in respect. So this company set up probably by her husband. She goes and she refers it to the government. Yeah, you should actually hire this company. It's really good. Corruption. This is pure corruption. DC, hi Max. Thanks so much, DC. Do you think Labour will win the general election, or will they need an alliance with either the Lib Dems or SNP? I think it's very difficult for the Labour Party to win on their own. They'll need to form an alliance. So there are two ways. They could do it through a pact, which would have to be unofficial, because the Labour Party convention does not constitution does not allow them to does not allow members to campaign for other parties. So they can't, in a sense, they can't have an official electoral pact, but they can, in a sense, not campaign fully, in a constituency, which would be a nod to, the Lib Dems or the Greens or someone else. In Scotland, I don't see them doing anything like that. So I think it could go a number of ways. So there's a possibility that Labour could win an outright majority. I think that's extremely remote, maybe borderline impossible. The second option is that they form a coalition with minor parties like, the Lib Dems, the Greens, and maybe even the DUP. The DUP may lend some support. That sounds strange, but the DUP like power, and they'd be willing. They have said before that they would look into providing support to the Labour Party. That will remain to be seen. There's an also possibility that the Labour Party could go into some sort of coalition or some sort of supply and agreement with the SNP. But of course, a requirement from the SNP would be support for a second referendum on independence. And I don't see a lot of people within the Labour Party supporting that, so that could break any sort of pact between the Labour Party and the SNP. So I think it would be difficult for Labour to form a government with the SNP included in that. Now the SNP could say, look, we'll provide you with some sort of support on particular bills, but I don't see it going any further than that. So it depends on how. The ideal scenario for the Labour Party would be an outright majority, but I don't see that happening at this moment. But, it's difficult to predict the future. Thanks for that super chat. But it's looking more and more likely that Labour will win in some way. Well, we have a super chat from Thonton. Great to see you once again. Incredible. Thank you so much for that. Very kind of you. Gareth, once again, thanks so much, Gareth. You're very kind tonight. You'd think the government would have a contingency contracts lined up for a pandemic? No. That was I think that was one part of exercise Cygnus, where they were supposed to be prepared to source PPE at the last minute. To have channels, to have supply chains set up, and they didn't do that. That was one of the reasons why they were, struggling to get access to PPE. And what was really shameful is that there were British companies producing PPE, and they were selling it to the US. They had actually reached out to the British government, and the British government said, "No, we're not interested." And they actually made PPE, and they were selling it to the USA. There were also problems in the USA when it came to this type of corruption as well. There was a case in Florida where a politician had set up a company, in a day, and this company the next day was ordering PPE from, I think it was PPE anyway, from China, and charging double when he was selling it to the National Institute for Health. To stop the tendering process being abused, as it so clearly was. Love the content, Max. P.S. Hate the Tories. Or F the Tories, I imagine. Thanks for that, Gareth. Yes. There should, I think, under Operation Exercise Cygnus, which was set up. This was an operation or an exercise ran in 2016. So 2016 or 2017, where it was like a war game based on a pandemic. Perfect exercise, and its findings were, okay, PPE is out of date, it needs to be replaced. Some of the PPE that is in store is not fit for purpose, it has to be replaced. Supply chains are not up to scratch, they need to be upgraded. And this report was handed over to Jeremy Hunt, and Jeremy Hunt did nothing with it. And then when the pandemic arrived, Boris Johnson, of course, was the wrong person to be in charge. And Matt Hancock didn't know what he was doing. But they knew who to blame. So let's move on. I'll come to this story in a moment. I'll come to this story in a moment. Just on the issue of PPE, I just wanted to show you this report. This is really, really made me angry.
Job is to nurse and comfort others, but Leanne and James have both been assaulted by patients.
I was having a conversation with him. The conversation was absolutely normal. He's been pleasant all day, and then he just turned around and spat in my face. This was in the height of the COVID pandemic.
I was talking to a colleague, and I suddenly felt a hand on my crotch area between my legs. To be a victim of that, for me just doing my job, for caring for people, is really difficult to process and justify.
This is something I really don't understand. I really don't understand how somebody can go into hospital. The people in the hospital are there to look after you. The people in the hospital are human. They have stresses. They're under a lot of strain at the moment. And how the hell can you turn around and do that to the medical staff? I view them as heroes. They're people who are doing a job I would not be able to do. I honestly could not. I respect them so much for doing that. The crap that they have to deal with day in, day out. The bureaucracy, the stress, the hours, the pay is not so great. And then to have somebody who's relying on you, that you're providing a care for, to turn around and do that. Christ on a bike, the absolute notions of that one. She sounds like she'd be right Al Moan bag. Thanks, Leon. I'm not sure who you're talking about.
Such attacks on medical staff are far from isolated, according to new 4-year data supplied by NHS hospital trusts. A Sky News Freedom of Information request was sent to 150 NHS trusts. 76 trusts responded and said they'd recorded 72,174 assaults.
72,174 assaults. How is that? Really, I don't understand this. I really don't understand how somebody can assault medical staff. Now, somebody may have mental health issues. Okay, that's a side issue. But not everyone has mental health issues which leads them to assault medical staff. And if you're frustrated with the system, don't take it out on the doctors. Don't take it out on the nurses, because they're not the ones who decide it. The politicians are the ones who are responsible. If the NHS is not functioning correctly, it's because of the Tories. That's who you should be angry with, not the medical staff.
Half the trusts said they'd reported only 3,161 assaults to police. That's 8.6% of all their assaults. Of those trusts, 23 kept a record of police action in their cases. They had nearly 19,000 assaults. They referred 1,289 to police, and only 458 resulted in a police caution.
And this is another problem. You have people who have assaulted members of staff. The assault is reported to the police, and then the court only, it was that quarter? Over a quarter have been investigated, a third have been investigated. This is unacceptable. So, like, if you realize, if you're medical staff and you realize, well, I can report this, but nothing is going to happen, then you're going to be less likely to report it. You're just going to take it, which is unacceptable once again. What happens, and this is not an excuse for what's happening, but people are getting frustrated because they go into hospital, they have to wait hours, they don't get treated, they don't get the treatment that they expect. And it's not because of the medical staff, it's because of the cuts. Because the Tories' whole idea is to underfund the NHS, to drive people into the private sector, because that's eventually the goal of all of this. And I don't know if you guys had seen Phil's stream the other day, and I asked him a question about the privatization of the NHS, and his response was quite shocking. He said it's not salvable. It's sold off completely. It won't be fixed. And that, hit me quite hard because, I think the NHS can be saved, but maybe he knows it better than I do, and he knows that no, it's beyond the point of return. It's beyond the point of no return. There are still some parts that are public, but it's gone. There's too much damage being done. Too much of it has been sold off, and the Labour Party as well are not all that interested in saving the NHS.
Or a court hearing. The decision to report an assault isn't always straightforward. When the patient spat at James, he didn't tell police.
On that occasion, I didn't pursue any charges. The gentleman was at the end of his life and confused. It went through my head that I didn't want his wife to be contacted, after he died, maybe a week later by the police, to be found out that was, the last memory of her husband.
I have so much respect for this nurse, that he was assaulted by this man, and he thought about the man's family. His first priority was the man's family. Just think about that. If that had happened to me on the street, my last concern would be the man's family. Oh, okay, he knew what was going on here. But if somebody assaulted me like that, I would be pretty pissed off with them. And this nurse let it go because he realized, I don't want to add pain and suffering to this family. It's a wonderful, wonderful act of kindness there. Fearless Well, thanks so much for that super chat, Max. As someone who has been in and out of hospitals all the time, I've seen attacks only twice in the RAH. Both patients had mental health issues. It's very regrettable that people with mental health issues will assault staff, and it's bad on both sides. The people are not acting out in the way that they're not acting with malice. It's an episode maybe they're having in that moment, and the staff, maybe some staff are able to deal with these things. Some staff are trained for it. Others maybe are new staff. They're not fully trained for it. It's very sad.
The government told us it was working to protect NHS staff from violent patients and others and ensure quick and effective punishment.
It is shocking, and we're seeing increasing numbers now where NHS staff face abuse and aggression in the workplace. I think it's important to put into context, though, that sometimes these patients could be unwell, particularly with mental health problems. The BMA has actually called on the government to increase the penalty for common assault from 1 to 2 years for NHS staff and public sector workers, and we're waiting for them to act on that.
Is there a sense that some staff see assault as an occupational hazard?
Some people may say it's part of the job, but actually no, I don't believe it is.
It should not be part of the job. It's not. You're not a police officer. You're dealing with members of the public. No, it should, and she doesn't believe it's part of the job, but nobody should believe it's part of the job. It should not be part of the job.
Form of assault, verbal or violence and aggression is not acceptable.
And it doesn't just affect hospital staff. A recent poll of UK family doctors revealed 3 out of 4 had faced a rise in verbal abuse or aggression during the coronavirus pandemic.
I imagine the pandemic really and I do think the pandemic brought out the worst in a lot of people. Imagine people going for doctor's appointments going, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that. And the doctor trying to give them advice, and their response was less than civil. Let's move on, guys. Now I want to cover this story, which is not a typical story they cover on the stream, but Elon Musk warns that he must protect Twitter users. So Elon Musk is in the process of purchasing, he hasn't done it yet, I don't think, but he's in the process of purchasing Twitter, and he suggests that he will be its savior. So the billionaire vowed to relax content restrictions, sparking fears from human rights groups. It could lead to a rise in bullying and misinformation. Regardless of ownership, all social media platforms must be responsible, Boris Johnson's spokesman said. The European Commission also warned Mr. Musk that he must protect users. Be it cars or social media, any company operating in Europe needs to comply with our rules, regardless of their shareholding. Terry Breton, the Commissioner for the Internal Market of the EU executive, warned in a tweet. The European Union has said in a new line of said its new online rules will overhaul the digital market, including how tech giants operate. Once they come into force, there'll be greater transparency around the way content is recommended to users, or why they are being targeted with certain ads, for example. Bedrock of democracy. Mr. Musk, who is self-described free speech absolutist, unless you post pictures of him with particular people from the past, he'll block you. So not exactly a free speech absolutist. He's free speech absolutist for himself and people he agree with. So yes, as long as you agree with him, then he agrees in free speech. But if you disagree with him, has been vocal in his criticism of Twitter's policies on moderating content, arguing that it needs to be given be a genuine forum for free speech. So this is somebody who doesn't understand free speech. Free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy, and Twitter is the digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated. The social media firm faces growing pressure from politicians and regulators over the content that appears on its platform. It has grown criticism from left and right over its efforts to mediate misinformation. In one of the most high-profile moves last year, it banned the former US President Donald Trump, perhaps its most powerful user, citing the risk of incitement of violence. In a series of tweets, Twitter founder Jack Dorsey, who still sits on the board, welcomed Mr. Musk's takeover, describing him as a singular solution I trust. The singular solution I trust. He said the firm had been owned by Wall Street and that Mr. Musk's decision to delist the shares and make it private was the correct first step. Twitter will continue to serve the public conversation, he said, but added he did not believe anyone should own or run Twitter. But in a Twitter thread, Amnesty International said, "We are concerned with any steps that Twitter might take to erode enforcement of the policies and mechanisms designed to protect users. The last thing we need is a Twitter that willfully turns a blind eye to violence and abusive speech against users, particularly those most disproportionately impacted, including women, non-binary persons, and others." Look, I think he has this idea that he's going to make it open for all, but as soon as you open everything, it allows abuse. You need to have rules. For example, if I opened the stream to everyone, if I opened the chat and didn't have any moderators, people would be just sending me abuse. So there have to be rules. Like everywhere you go, there are rules. If you go to the public library, you can't do what you want. If you go to the public square, you can't do what you want. This idea, we're going to allow people to say whatever they want. There have to be certain rules against that, because there are serious consequences. And we saw last year in 2021, when the President of the United States incited a riot. There was a real risk to the life of the Vice President, to members of Congress. Things could have gone very differently. Can you imagine if the police there had opened fire on these people? Those people would have returned fire. There could have been a bloodbath. And the president was egging it on. There have to be consequences for that. So I imagine he'll try and bring Trump back. I don't know if Trump wants to come back. He has set up his own one. But depends on how that's going. Trump likes attention, so Trump would probably come back because he likes attention. And he likes creating trouble. I don't know. That Musk bloke doesn't look healthy. Can't quite work out what it is. The right is just upset that they have to follow the terms of service or be deplatformed. Yes, they want to be able to silence other people and not be silenced themselves. They talk about cancel culture when they're the ones who are trying to cancel people who disagree with them. Okay, I want to move on. I just wanted to touch that story. Finally, on Ukraine. It doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. It says here, Russia taking colossal losses in eastern battle, says Ukraine. It says here, we have suffered losses, but the Russians' losses are much bigger. They have colossal losses. There was another point I wanted to read out. There was a summary some time ago. Let me see if I can find it. Wonderful. An air raid in Kiev. This was very concerning. Zelensky says Russia tried to humiliate UN with Kiev attack. In a video address late last night, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned yesterday's Russian airstrikes on Kiev, which took place while the UN General Secretary was visiting the capital. So the UN General Secretary was in Kiev to meet with the Ukrainian government, and the Russians knew this, and they sent an airstrike anyway to embarrass, I don't know, the UN, to embarrass Ukraine. What was it? I think this sort of approach really backfires. Here we go. Yes. So Moscow has confirmed that it has carried out an airstrike on Kiev during a visit by the UN General Secretary. The mayor of Kiev, however, said 25-story residential building in the capital's Shlevensky district was hit in the strike. Ukraine's president said that the overnight address in Kiev attack was aimed at humiliating the United Nations. Ukraine acknowledges heavy losses from Russian attack in the east as Moscow forces, having failed to seize the capital, redoubled their efforts to fully capture the eastern Donbass region. The situation in the besieged Azovstal steel plant in the city of Mariupol is beyond the humanitarian catastrophe, a Ukrainian commander inside the facility has said. 2 British aid workers have reportedly been captured by Russian forces in Ukraine, have been named. This is very concerning. So we have aid workers who have been kidnapped by the Russians, captured by the Russians, but in a sense, kidnapped. They're there to help people in Ukraine, and they've been taken by the Russians. A former U.S. Marine has been killed fighting alongside Ukrainian forces, the first U.S. citizen known to have died in combat in the war with Russia. And that was Joseph Cancel, age 22. Britain will send investigators to Ukraine to help gather evidence of war crimes, including sexual violence, the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has said. So it's a situation that more weapons are being sent to Ukraine, heavier weapons, but this thing is not ending anytime soon. It's believed it's going to go on for months more, or even years, which is extremely concerning. Finally, before we finish for tonight, I just want to cover this one last story, guys. Let me read some more of your comments before we continue. There's more of a chance of opening a chastity belt than having any free speech on these platforms. Even Trump's new site is loaded with restrictions. Of course. It's about... Are you allowed to criticize the dear leader? No, of course not. Then that isn't free speech. Can you call Trump all the names under the sun? No, you're not allowed to do that. Then they will claim this is about free speech, but no, it's not. Of course, there are rules and there are restrictions. QL Library says a lot of Americans do not understand the First Amendment. It only covers standing physically in public, and you can speak about the government. EU human rights acts cover a lot more. Yeah, the free, when people talk about free speech, it's about free speech, being allowed to speak your mind, and the government cannot interfere. The government can't arrest you for speaking your mind in the public square, in a physical space. This is not online. Twitter is a private company. Okay, so you don't have free speech on Twitter. You don't have free speech on Facebook. You don't have free speech on YouTube. So there is always moderated speech. And, in the US, you're allowed to say whatever you want, but there are always consequences. You're not protected from the consequences. It's just the government can't stop you, but if you call someone out, there's a consequence to that. And these platforms have to protect themselves. More chance if the Russian report or Lebedev report's been published. Free speech is an illusion. Anyway, let's go to this last video for this evening.
Well done. Pop that inside your mouth. Nice tight lips. Really big breath in.
When you take a deep breath in, imagine someone strangling you and then just slowly crushing your windpipe.
16-year-old Reese Connor's asthma is so severe, it has nearly killed him.
Felt like a really sharp pain on my chest on the left side, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. The pain gets more intense, and then eventually I just dropped to the floor, and I couldn't breathe anything, and I got rushed to hospital, and my mum was tapping my face, and I wasn't waking up at all. That's the one that stays in my head the most out of all of them.
When and where the air is polluted, Reese knows about it immediately.
5 p.m. definitely, rush hour. Everyone's coming back from work or something, and it's just, it's not good.
And you feel that as a direct consequence of the 5 p.m. traffic?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Definitely, 100%.
So I think the evidence is very clear that air pollution increases the risk that a child might get asthma in the first place. And for people who have asthma, prolonged exposure to air pollution can increase the risk of asthma attacks and make a child's symptoms worse, even when they're having a good day, even when they're well. So the impact is profound, and we know that severe asthma and air pollution can be a fatal mix.
New modelling from Imperial College London, commissioned by clean air campaigners and shown exclusively to Channel 4 News, reveals in detail never seen before air pollution across the entire UK. The numbers are stark. The model suggests the air at 70% of British addresses is so dirty it breaks current World Health Organization guidelines for 3 dangerous pollutants. 97% of addresses break at least one of these guidelines, according to the model.
There are places throughout the UK that have more localised air pollution than previously we'd expected. So people traditionally would associate air pollution with cities, but maybe they'll associate air pollution more with smaller towns and more rural areas than previously they had.
Looks are deceptive. The green idyll of a bird reserve outside Leeds. Yet this new data shows many places like this could be toxic.
Do you think the air's nice around here?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
It's actually really polluted.
Is it?
Really? Oh, wow.
It does shock you to know that it is high considering where you're at.
That's a real concern. A real concern. I'm a driver in an electric car just to do my little bit.
The air we breathe is full of invisible microscopic particles which can be dangerous. PM 2.5 and PM 10 are minuscule, many times smaller than the width of a human hair. They come from cars and lorries, power stations, wood and coal burners. The reason they're dangerous is they can lodge deep inside our lungs. PM 2.5 are so small they can even make it into the bloodstream. Inhaling just a small amount can reduce life expectancy and cause lung and heart disease. Then there's nitrogen dioxide, which comes not just from cars and lorries, but also from the gas boilers in our homes. Prolonged exposure can reduce the capacity of a child's delicate growing lungs and also cause asthma attacks.
So the solution to this is, for example, what the people were protesting on the street, insulating Britain, insulating buildings, taking out boilers, putting in heat pumps instead. This is expensive, but it's much more expensive to treat these illnesses later on. A switch from petrol and diesel cars to electric, or at least hybrid. This would be a good step forward as well. This would reduce, and thousands of people die every year because of this. And the response from the right is always, well, look, we don't want to spend money on dealing with these things. We don't want to spend money on protecting the environment. But by protecting the environment, you're also protecting people. So I want to finish on that, guys. Thanks so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thanks for your super chats. Just a reminder once again that there is no Sunday brunch this Sunday, but I'll see you next Sunday, the one on the 8th of May. So have a great weekend, guys. But before we finish, we always have our one for the road, one funny video before we finish. Massive thank you to the moderators for doing a wonderful job keeping the stream on the straight and narrow. Thanks to everyone who sent a super chat, greatly appreciated. Once again, thanks so much for that. And thanks for everyone who commented and smashed the like button. So before we go, and remember, after the stream, we have our post-stream chat on Discord. Enjoy this.
We in government are working hard on non-fiscal solutions to the cost of living crisis. That means they don't involve more money. Yes, unlike non-physical solutions, which is how my wife copes with our marriage. So you have nothing left in the budget. No, things are very tight right now. I can barely afford to heat my pool. What kind of solutions are you considering? Well, we've already announced a few ideas. Letting cars have an MOT every 2 years instead of 1, allowing nurseries to look after more toddlers per carer, turning off traffic lights at weekends. Sorry, what? Yes, we think that on Saturdays and Sundays, drivers can just use their common sense at junctions. It will save us a lot of money. Okay. We're also considering binning all food standards. What about the risk of food poisoning? We'll just have to learn to live with it. We're also encouraging people only to go to the doctors every other time they feel ill, because statistically the chance of it being a real problem are about 50%. Do you have data on that? No, but it feels right, doesn't it? Some poorer people are already having to choose between heating and eating. That's great. We believe in the power of choice and slogans that rhyme. Won't all of this have a very negative effect on the nation's health? I'm sure that the NHS can cope. I mean, it's coped with everything we've thrown at it so far. And if it can't, well, then we'll use that as an excuse to privatise it, like we've always wanted to. What if people are still struggling to pay the bills? Well, I suppose one option would be to dip into their savings. What savings? The savings they built up from all the COVID relief funds we gave out. I mean, some of my friends ended up with suitcases of cash. What if they didn't get COVID relief funds? Then they've only got themselves to blame, haven't they? Really? Look, if the worst comes to the worst, they can just put everything on expenses. Expenses? Yes, just claim it back, you know. Claim it back from who? Do you know what? I've never really thought about that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go to the latest film premiere with Priti Patel. Strictly government business, of course. What are you watching? Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. She's hoping to pick up a few ideas for our new immigration policy. If we can't send people to Rwanda, how about Wakanda? Thank you, Minister. Next up, as Marine Le Pen comes second in the French presidential election, we'll explain why winning 41% of the vote means her supporters must be taken very seriously, whereas winning 48% of the vote means your views must be completely ignored.
Wonderful. I want to say thanks to Chris Murphy. Thanks for that super chat. And thanks to number 3, polluters should pay. Yes, polluters should pay. There are large companies and corporations that are able to get away with it. And, you know, there are loopholes that allow them to pollute the land, to pollute the air, to pollute the water. And we have to live with the consequences of that. It shouldn't that they should pay, but they should also be put in prison, because if they risked prison time, they'd be less likely to allow these things to happen. But for some reason, we don't do that. So guys, once again, thanks so much for all of your support. Thanks to everyone who came on. Thanks for the moderators for doing a wonderful job. And have a great weekend. See you next time. Same bat time, same bat channel. Tuesday evening. Have a great weekend once again. Take care and good night.